Hello, and welcome back to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, choreographers, composers, and opera singers, basically my favorite people in the entire universe. I'm really excited to have as my guest today Anastasia Petrunina. Anastasia is the visiting assistant professor of violin at Furman University. She is also the concertmaster at the Augusta Symphony. She is passionate about contemporary music, and she received her bachelor's degree at the Moscow Conservatory College, her master's degree at Yale, and her Doctor of Musical Arts at the University of Georgia. And Anastasia and I met at the Del Mar International Composing Symposium, and it last year, right, in 2024.
That's right.
And I've been really excited about having her on today. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to start our conversation like I do with all of my guests and ask you what being a violinist means to you personally.
I think being a violinist for me personally means that I get to touch this world with music and to um, communicate with people through the voice of my violin. I think this is the main reason why I started playing violin in the first place, because this was something that gave me this feeling of that communication, that voice creation, and my ability to speak to this world by the violin and the bow.
That's, and I can so relate to that. I think as musicians, I love how you describe the violin as your voice. That's just, I've heard instruments being referred to as characters, but I love the voice because, our voices are inside of us. So that's something that you're giving deep inside yourself to the world, which is just so beautiful. So why don't you tell us your story? How did you fall in love with the violin? When did you start? What were your early years like? And is the life you're living today the kind of life you dreamed of when you were a child, or things turned out differently? Just tell us all about that.
Well, when I was a child, first of all, my parents are not musicians. So when at the age of, I don't know, like 3, 4, I picked up a little metal xylophone, which was popular back then. And I just started to kind of find the melodies of the popular songs, like pop songs.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and I think this was the first time that my parents realized that, she might have, like a musical ear or something. But that didn't go anywhere because we lived in a small village with zero cultural possibilities. And only after we moved, um, we attended a concert where the girl was playing violin, and I said, okay, I want to play a violin. So that's when my parents took me to the music school, and that's how I started. And I started with the piano, but then the piano teacher said that my hands are not appropriate for piano. I still don't know what it means, but I'm very grateful to her that she said that. So she sent me next door to my violin teacher, and that's how it all started. Yeah.
That's an amazing story. And did you have dreams about your life? I mean, what did you? I guess this is a hard question. When we're kids, we don't really know. We just love playing or love playing love what we're doing. But did you have an idea, I guess, as the years went by, of what you wanted your life to look like? Did that dream get fulfilled for you? Was it different?
Well, I had complicated relationship with violin, and when I was a kid, I dreamt of being on stage and all that. But then I had a quite traumatic experience when I was 12 or 13 years old at a music competition, and that's when I decided to quit music completely. And almost for a year, I barely touched my violin.
Wow.
Yeah, and at that time, I didn't think that I will continue with the music at all. So yeah, at that point, I thought, I would go either in psychology or English field, because where we lived in Kamchatka, this is far east of Russia,
Uh-huh.
the touristic activities were quite popular because it's a quite busy touristic destination. So I thought, if not music, I'll either do psychology or, work in this direction. But going fast forward, I think now I have it all with music, with psychology, and all of it being in English.
Those were pretty big thoughts for a 12-year-old, I have to say.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So what brought you back to the violin? I'm so happy that all of that came together for you, but what brought you back to the violin and how did everything else fold into that?
Well, I think it was a combination of factors, but the strongest one, I think, was visiting a concert of a very good musician, and he touched me in a very special way, and I saw the truth, if I can say so, the truth of being on stage and just communicating with an audience, and I realized that if I don't pursue this path, I won't have an ability to do it in other fields. So I think that drew me back to this music path.
Well, and I'm personally grateful for that because your playing is absolutely amazing, and it's such a pleasure to watch you and to hear you too.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah. So, none of us can really anticipate how our lives unfold. I just, I look at you and I've only known you for about a year, but I just think how wonderful your journey looks to have been. And as we get more experienced, I mean, you've performed all over the world. How does this happen? I mean, you play, did you do more competitions? How did you end up being recognized, or I guess just being, in symphonies and hopefully the right people hearing you or building a network, those relationships? How did that develop for you?
Well, because of that experience with my first ever competition, I didn't take a lot of them afterwards. I'm not a competition girl. I'm not just that type, and I was not taught how to do it properly.
That can be rather scarring, I think.
Well, I believe that you have to be made out of a specific dough to
Yes.
do it without any mental trauma.
Hmm.
Because I did see a lot of people, who were suffering from it, myself included. And, you have to be built for it or trained for it properly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't do a lot of it. And I just played. I just did my best in terms of learning repertoire, playing with people, and just doing, what I do.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great answer. So, you're founder of and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, the ViMaDeAn Duo. Would you
Sure.
correct me? Is that
Mhm.
the right pronunciation? And that's a pretty eclectic combination with your husband, Denis, who is a percussionist. And it's just, I had never seen a violinist and a marimba perform together before. So I'm sure there are other percussion instruments that you perform with him that
Of
he
course.
plays when you perform. If you'll just talk a little bit about how you met him, how the two of you decided to start this duo, and just the exploring, all the wonderful things that came as a result.
Sure. So we've met at the Yale School of Music when we were doing our master's degree. And I think it was funny because, going back in our memories, we went through some of the events in Moscow that we could have potentially overlapped, but we never did. So, we had to go all the way to New Haven to meet. And, we still argue if, we started dating first or we started playing first. So it's complicated, but I think from the very first time when we started playing, we felt this interesting connection, and it's not even about like what instruments we play. It's about something else. This is something that people refer to after our concerts. That type of connection. So you might be able to answer that better than I.
No, I'm witness to, I've been witness to that and I can vouch for it for sure. Yeah, it's a lovely communication that the two of you have, and then it spills over obviously into the audience. And it's just, it's kind of funny because I remember you were saying, when you played the xylophone as a child, and now, you're in a,
Yeah.
violin percussion duo. So this is wonderful. Um, so does he always play the marimba when you're performing, or does he play different instruments or?
Yeah, so we started with the marimba, and actually the ViMaDeAn Duo breaks up in four syllables. Violin stands for violin, MA for marimba, DE for Denis, and AN
Ah,
for
here we
Anastasia.
go.
Yeah,
Okay.
so marimba is kind of there, and that's how we started. But of course, he plays everything because these guys, percussionists, I mean,
Sure.
they play whatever they can hit.
Sure. Yeah.
And one of our last pieces that we've been working on, there was a specific project which was linked to the environmental issues. And we collaborated with our dear friend who wrote music for violin and recycled percussion. So Dennis only plays recycled materials. He builds a little I don't know even how to call this. So he basically cut metal pipes, and then he's playing glasses. He's playing plastic bottles. We're playing all kinds of stuff. I don't want to tell everything, but
Right.
yeah, he can play anything, and I think that combination, the variety of combination, gives us a lot of room for artistic exploration.
Absolutely. And I think that must make the commissions that you solicit pretty interesting,
Yep.
yeah, and I love that you commission so many contemporary works, and it's got to be a lot of fun, writing for that kind of combination. So so how, let's see, so you all have been married 15 years, so the duo was established pretty early on, or?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, okay. Um, so I love your posts about musicians and health and, working out, keeping your body fit. And I think obviously from your psychology mention, mental health as well. Let's talk a little bit about that if you don't mind. And you can start anywhere you'd like, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about both and why you seem to be pretty passionate about both of them. And I think that's wonderful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I am absolutely passionate, and this passion actually started at that crucial moment of that unfortunate, or from that point of view, fortunate first composition when I was a teenager, and that was my first exposure with psychology in general. That's when I first met with a was mother of my dear friend. She was a certified psychologist, and she helped me to go through this traumatic experience. And partially, thankfully to her, I'm back in the music field. And since then, back then we didn't have a lot of access to all the psychology data on musicians, and overcoming performance anxiety and all that. Yeah, so
Mhm.
back then, like I even remember times without internet.
Yes,
So
so can I.
yeah, so you had to dig some information in the libraries, and it was a long and not such an easy process like it is today. So there was a true interest of mine, and when I was at Yale, I took classes in psychology, which I'm also very grateful for. And that helped myself a lot because I was dealing with a lot of challenges myself, like performance anxiety and all that. And there was no access to specialists who were working with this, or I didn't have a big support group who would help me
Mhm.
with this or something like this. So I had to learn a lot of things myself, and I see the necessity of it right now, especially being a teacher. So I do think that it's absolutely crucial for musicians to know about this, to learn about that, and really, really find answers if you have questions.
Yeah, I think probably it sounds like your experience is similar to mine in, that it was pretty much frowned upon, the performance anxiety, and maybe standards were so high and seemingly impossibly so in some instances, and not very, there wasn't a lot of support maybe from teachers even, for that kind of thing, and to grow as a musician, which I think is really sad. And I think we're in a better place now, because I think a lot of teachers, I know I hear some teachers, talk about the need to really be supportive for students and provide that, and I guess, for lack of a better term, teach students to really become performers, to teach them how to manage that. And, you know, today you can find information or thoughts on performance anxiety, I think, from a lot of different people. And in my experience, it's just been kind of a trial and error kind of thing to develop what works for you. And I know we're all individuals, but is there a way that you could maybe talk about how to determine what's good advice, what isn't good advice, how to try things, in the process of trying, you're out there performing, and if it doesn't work, do you just keep trying, and maybe, this stigma of giving a not perfect performance. Can you talk about all of that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so trial and error and just go perform more often. I recently made a video for that, because I'm so sad when I see people just saying, just go perform more, and there is a scientific explanation why this just go perform more does not work. People are using this exposure therapy as a remedy, basically, for performance anxiety, but it has to be done right. Yeah, if you just go on stage every time without knowing the cause root of your anxiety, and you
Mhm.
don't try things, you don't have tools to conquer your anxiety, you don't have tools to um, for proper breathing, for mental focus, and all this, uh, every time you go on stage, you actually hurt yourself. Yeah, it's called negative reinforcement and all that, but without even scientific background, I always felt this is not right. You have to, first of all, find the root cause of what's not working for you. Yeah, for some people, they're only experiencing, some mild uncomfortable feeling. For some people, it goes away with beta blockers and they're happy and they perform their best. For some people, it can go into a panic attack if they will just continue doing it until the panic attacks come.
Mhm.
So it's very individual. So you do have to really know yourself. If you cannot figure out what's holding you back or what's causing that performance anxiety, seek help with a specialist. It's pretty serious, but it's also curable. Yeah, find somebody who cares. Find somebody who has background in this, and find somebody who will be really really trying to help you. Yeah, because a lot of times I hear people saying, "Oh, I talked to my teacher, and she says that." It's nothing serious. Everybody has performance anxiety, so like, why bother? No, you have to have an individual approach to every person, because you might have a mild case of just needing tools like proper breathing or tools to help you um, um, kind of narrow your mental dialogue when you're going on stage. Or there might be some more deeper underlying issues of your personality, going much, much, how do I
Like
say?
that. Yeah,
Yeah, far back, which
yeah,
was my case.
yeah,
Yeah, and until I kind of got into the root of that, I wasn't able to go on stage and do what I do today.
yeah, yeah. I share that experience. I think yours probably is the competition, but um, an opera singer when I was younger, and I used to love, just it was just the place where I wanted to live, just being on that stage, and having that communication with the audience. You can just feel it so much. It's palpable. And then I had a really unfortunate, traumatic thing happen, and I really couldn't emotionally think about singing again for many, many, many years. And a few years ago, I ended up having a session with a really good psychologist, and it's like she opened a door for me that had been closed for so long, and it didn't happen immediately, but about a year and a half after that, I started studying voice again, and I just auditioned for our local concert opera company, and was a successful audition. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah,
Wonderful.
thank you. Yeah, so this is, the first part of my musical self that I knew about singing. The dream that I always had of being an opera singer in some way is actually coming true for me at this point in my life. So I can so relate to your experience of having a traumatic experience and needing professional help to kind of open that door and get past that trauma. And I think trauma, occurs to a lot of people, and maybe they don't think about that, or maybe they try to hide it or cover it up, or feel badly, about it, or think they can get past it themselves. But I think it's really, really valuable. I also worked with a therapist that is a pianist herself, and she was tremendously helpful with my performance anxiety as a pianist. And then I've been taking acting classes, method acting classes at Lee Strasberg, and that's really been helpful too, because they do teach you the relaxation and a lot about the breath and so many things. This is a topic we could explore all
Of
day.
course.
Like, yeah, 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 yeah. I think talk about the breath. How important do you feel the breath is to you? And do you practice these things when you're practicing as well? In other words, do you practice the tools off stage that you use to manage your performance anxiety on stage?
Of course, yeah, and my students could, confirm that I'm constantly doing this when I'm in a lesson. I'm constantly asking, "Are you still breathing?" So,
Good question.
um, when I was at college, I lived in a dorm with four singers. So, seeing them being very conscious about their bodies, about how they slept, how they ate, how they felt today, and all that, and especially about the importance of their breathing. I think that made a profound influence on how I play my own instrument now. So. Breathing is something that gets oftentimes overlooked for string players because we kind of do not depend on it directly, right? For
Sure.
singers, it's a necessity. For wind players, brass, all of them, it's a necessity. They do have to pay attention.
Mhm.
But for us, we kind of, so obsessed with what is my right hand doing? What is my left hand doing? All of that,
Mhm.
that a lot of times we just forget how to breathe properly, and that it has a direct effect on the quality of the sound that we're making, and on injury prevention and all that. So I do teach my students to breathe properly before going on stage, before we start playing, so that the body goes into balance before, you even you start your first sound. Yeah,
Yeah.
because even in our everyday lives, you would see a lot of us,
Yes.
doing this,
Guilty.
which yeah, which also makes your breathing pattern go here, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of times when I'm working with students, like, okay, put your right hand here, put your left hand on your belly, and breathe with your belly so that you feel your left hand going up and down. And some people are saying, "Oh, how do you breathe into your belly?" And it's like, okay. So I think this tells you about how important it is to
Yeah.
to teach people how to actually feel your body. And sorry, I'm gonna do just a quick turnaround to the trauma and body. I
Yes.
love that book, The Body Keeps the Score. I think every musician needs to read that.
Would you say that again, please? That title again?
The Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
Yeah, it talks about how trauma gets locked into your body without you even knowing that, and how it affects a lot of things without you even knowing that. And of course, the author talks about how to deal with this, how to overcome this, and he gives specific tools. And there's a lot of scientific background, and I love it.
Yeah. That sounds like a wonderful book. I might have to get that and read it myself.
Mhm.
Um, And so I love the fact that you're teaching your students, and I'm sure you do this in your own practice sessions, being very conscious of the breathing before you even start. I think that's so important because if you do that in your practice sessions and in your pre-performance ritual, then your body automatically gets used to that, and you develop this path. It gives you, those are some of the tools, I guess, that you're speaking about.
Of
Let's
course.
let's segue into actual physical fitness and how this, what role that has to play in good performance.
Well, again, I think it's just necessary. It just like breathing, it gets overlooked because we think, musicians are some magical creatures who are going down from clouds. They come down and play concerts, and they don't eat, and then they don't, do things that real humans do and all that. But in reality, it's not true, and I always think about musicians as athletes, but on another level, because we not only do we have this physical component, we have this creative component to it, and this, in my opinion, this is what makes us a little bit more complex.
Uh-huh.
And we do have to think a lot about our bodies because, for example, when you're playing 35 minutes of a concerto, you do have to have some endurance in your body to not only survive that, but to survive it on a beautiful level.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, what are some, I know in some of your Instagram posts, you have illustrated specific exercises for violinists. Would you talk about a few of those with us?
Well, they're not only for violinists. I think I'm showing a lot of exercises for the upper back,
Yeah.
neck, and all this. I think they're universal because we all use all of our muscles, hopefully. So, I think they're pretty usable by all musicians.
Yeah, yeah. And I think about as a pianist, the upper back, very important. Your posture on the bench is very important. As a singer, obviously. As a violinist, sometimes you're sitting, sometimes you're standing.
Right.
So all of that comes into play. Um, and I guess with the breathing, maybe abdominal, strength, maybe some diaphragm exercises or something like that. I don't know, but I really enjoy your posts, and I would encourage people who follow you on Instagram to take a look at those because they're really inspiring. It looks like you're having a lot of fun when you're doing them, and I think that's a big component. Sometimes we think about doing all these things. We're like, oh, I just want to play. I just want to learn this piece. I just want to do this. But I have found when I am really focusing on my fitness, it gives me more energy. It helps me, I guess, kind of get out of my body in a way so that I can focus mentally more on my music. And do you find that to be true as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when first of all, if we're talking injury prevention, yeah, it is super important for us to start early, to address this issue before we have an issue, because a lot of times I see musicians, not using their bodies properly, not taking care of their bodies, and just using them until the problem comes, and then they go into physiotherapy when it's kind of late. Yeah, so it's always better to prevent that. And another thing that I see a lot is we as musicians, we tend to separate our body, like, okay, I'm a violinist, I need my hands, to be healthy.
Yes.
It's like, here's my left hand, here's my right hand, like neck. But then how you actually sit when you play, you engage your entire body. you
Right.
know we
Right.
have lines which run from the bottom of our feet to the front of our forehead. If you
Yeah.
think about this, if you think about fascia and all of those things which are interconnected, playing an instrument becomes a completely different three-dimensional experience.
Absolutely.
You cannot cut yourself and only think about your upper body,
Right.
because you're engaging your entire body when you're making just this one sound.
Yeah.
So this is how I see it.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, in fact, it's a lot like a ballet dancer. We look at those beautiful artists on stage and they look like they're standing perfectly still. I've taken dance classes for 12 years, So I know how difficult it is, and every muscle in your body is either it's working at some level, even if it's just trying to hold your balance or hold something. You can't say, okay, I'm here, and just let it go. And so I guess relating that to, I had a really just for students who were watching this, I had a really unfortunate incident when I was finishing my degree a couple of years ago. Um, I was in the throes of just really working hard trying to finish my degree. I was performing more than I ever had in any semester, plus trying to do the last semester or two of school, which is always pretty crazy, I think. And so I decided I would back off of my working out a bit, which was the biggest mistake I could ever make because I ended up with knots all up and down my right arm, and had to postpone my senior recital twice actually because of that. And it made me vow I would never ever abandon my workout routine again, because you're just setting yourself up for injury, because the muscles that were I used to play the piano were getting overused, and muscles that supported those muscles were not in very good shape. So I'm sure you see the same thing in violinists quite often, or from time to time.
In any musicians, yeah, just because of the repetitive nature of
Yeah.
a lot of our movements, yeah, some of our muscles naturally get more stronger, and
Mhm.
some are weaker. So if you do not address the imbalances of it, then year after year, you can see the process um, of complicated this process. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you don't address this, you might end up with an injury, and this
Yeah.
is why I think it's important to address this before it comes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, well, you're doing a lot of exciting things. The last I read about was, I think, or recently, fairly recently, maybe you recorded an album based on environmental issues. Is that correct? Do you want to talk
We're,
about that for us a little
yeah,
bit?
we're still working on it, and we
Okay,
hope to finish it next year.
okay.
There have been quite a few wonderful composers who wrote some wonderful pieces for us. So we're looking forward to some premieres this season, and then hopefully we'll finish the recording of it next summer.
That sounds very exciting. Are there
Mhm.
other exciting things coming up that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, this coming season is quite interesting for our duo. We're going to be playing at some festivals, concert halls, and all that. I'm excited to be back to Furman to teach my students and collaborate with my colleagues. And I'm looking forward to some of my solo performances. So yeah, it should be a good season.
Yeah, it sounds like it will be. And then you just got back from Del Mar again. You were there again this summer, right? Yeah. And
Correct.
that's always a great experience. I do hope to go back there at some point, but it was, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
absolutely as exciting and wonderful as it was the year before when I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was wonderful, and we had quite a bit of wonderful composers and pieces, and yeah, it was a wonderful time.
that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you and exploring all the wonderful facets of your professional life. And I really appreciate your making time in your busy schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. So make sure you come back for our next issue in the series of Talking Shop, and have a great day. We'll see you then.